Commanders' offseason trade rumors are going crazy. Intro yo fam. If you're watching this right now, you already know what time it is. The Washington Commanders are deep in the offseason, and this is not just any offseason, bro. This is the moment where Adam Peters has to prove whether anything really sunk in after that 5-12 train wreck of a season we just went through. And calling it a train wreck is not an exaggeration. 1 year after getting to the NFC Championship game, we collapsed completely. But here we are, fam, because this squad doesn't quit, and neither do we. And the wildest part of all this is the trade rumors are flying. Tyreek Hill, TJ Watt, TJ Hockenson, names that a month ago weren't even on our radar, are now being thrown around by legit analysts as possible moves for Washington. Bro, this is intense. And today we're breaking down the three biggest stories driving the Commanders' rumor mill right now. We're going to talk about what actually makes sense, what's straight up smoke, and what Jayden Daniels really needs to get back to being the QB that took us to glory in 2024. Keep it a buck, fam. This offseason decides whether we get back in the mix or stay stuck in mediocrity. So strap in, because this is going to be good. And before I forget, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're going to be covering every move, every rumor, every decision the Commanders make over the next few weeks. You cannot miss any of this, bro. Smash that like if you're already hyped, because I know you want to see this team back where it belongs. In the playoffs, fighting for a Super Bowl. Okay, bro, let's start with the nuclear bomb. Bleacher Report dropped an article mentioning Tyreek Hill as a possible trade target for the Commanders. And when I read that, I almost fell out of my chair. Listen, Tyreek Hill in Washington, with Jayden Daniels throwing the rock. Can you even picture that? But before we get way too hyped, we gotta slow it down and really break this down. Because this move has more layers than an onion, fam. And we need to peel back every single one to see if this is realistic, if it actually makes sense, and if it would really help us get back to competing. First, full context. Terry McLaurin is still our WR1, and nobody is taking that title away. Terry is a pro, a leader, and one of the best route runners in the entire league. But let's be real, Terry cannot do everything solo. The 2025 season showed that in the most painful way possible. Teams were bracketing Terry, rolling a safety over the top, and the rest of our receivers just could not separate. And with Deebo Samuel up in the air long term, because the future here is murky after that 5th-round trade we made, we are absolutely desperate for another explosive perimeter weapon. This is not optional, bro. It's mandatory if we want Jayden Daniels to get back to being that dynamic quarterback we saw in 2024. That's where Tyreek Hill comes in. Bro, this dude has 6 Pro Bowls, multiple All-Pro nods, and a Super Bowl ring. We're not talking about a project or some vet on the edge of falling off a cliff. We're talking about a receiver who, when healthy, is still one of the most dangerous players in the league. The speed is legendary. The ability to separate on short and deep routes is elite. And more importantly, Hill's sheer presence on the field changes the way defenses have to design their entire game plan. Let me walk you through how this works tactically, because it matters. When Tyreek Hill is on the field, safeties cannot crowd the box. They have to stay deep and respect that 4.29 speed in the 40. That opens up the middle of the field. Terry McLaurin's intermediate routes hit way harder. Tight ends get more room to operate. And all of a sudden, Jayden Daniels is getting cleaner reads because the defense is stretched both vertically and horizontally. And this is not just theory, fam. We've seen it play out live. When Hill was in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, defenses had to pour insane resources into just containing him. When he went to Miami, Tua Tagovailoa had the best years of a career because Hill created so much space. Now imagine that with Jayden Daniels, who has an arm every bit as live as Mahomes and the mobility to extend plays when Hill breaks loose. On scramble drills, bro, that is a straight cheat code. Now here comes the tricky part, and we gotta be honest about it. Hill is coming off a serious knee injury. We're talking multiple torn ligaments, fam. That is not some light thing. Durability is a legit concern, and any team trading for him needs to be ready at medical risk. But here's the detail a lot of people are missing. The Dolphins were still drawing defensive attention toward Hill even when he was clearly limited. That tells you everything you need to know about his gravitational pull on a game. And look, there are historical examples of teams taking calculated swings on injured players and hitting big. The Rams went and got Matthew Stafford when a lot of people questioned the health and whether he could win big games, and they won a Super Bowl the very next season. The Eagles traded for A.J. Brown in a move a ton of analysts hated because of the draft capital costs, and Jalen Hurts turned into an instant MVP candidate. Why? Because having an elite receiver doesn't just boost one player's stats, bro. It fundamentally changes the geometry of the field. It opens space for everyone. It makes life easier for the quarterback in terms of reads and decision-making. And that is exactly what Jayden Daniels needs at this critical stage of development. In 2024, Jayden played with pure confidence because there were legit options out there. Terry was doing Terry things. Tight ends were active and contributing, and the offense had balance between the run game and the passing game. In 2025, the whole thing fell apart because defenses knew exactly what to do. Take Terry McLaurin away and force everybody else to win one-on-ones, which they just could not do consistently. With Hill on the field, that equation changes completely. Safeties are staying deep to respect the speed. Corners can't press as hard because if Hill wins the release, it's 6 on the board immediately. Now Terry McLaurin is back to getting true one-on-one matchups, and that's where Terry absolutely cooks. Terry versus a single corner with no safety help is basically unfair. We've seen it for years. The problem in 2025 was he almost never saw those looks because defenses could afford to shade coverage and bracket him. With Hill on the other side, that stops. Now you've got 2 legit elite receivers that defenses have to honor, and that opens up everything else for the rest of the offense. But fam, we gotta be totally real about the price tag. This trade is not coming cheap under any scenario. Hill has a big-time contract that pays him like the elite receiver that he is, and the Dolphins are not just giving him away because he got hurt. We're probably talking at least a second-round pick, maybe more depending on how badly Miami wants to retool and how much cap they're trying to clear. And we already do not have a second-rounder in 2026 because of past moves. So Adam Peters would have to dip into future draft capital, probably 2027 picks, which is risky when this roster is still under construction and we've got needs all over the place. And this is where Adam Peters' roster building philosophy comes in, and why this kind of move would say a lot about his vision. From day one, he's shown he is not scared to swing big. He traded for Laramie Tunsil in a move a lot of people side-eyed at first, and that turned into a home run because it locked down the offensive line immediately. He brought in Marshon Lattimore, which, did not work the way we hoped for. A bunch of reasons. But the bigger point is Peters clearly understands how valuable that competitive window is with Jayden Daniels on a rookie deal. Every year you don't fully maximize that cheap QB cap window is a year you might never get back. When your franchise quarterback is still on a rookie deal, that's when you have financial flexibility you will never see again once that second contract hits. That is your golden Super Bowl window. And if Peters honestly believes Tyreek Hill can be that catalyst piece that gets us back to the playoffs and makes us a real threat, bro, he's going to pick up the phone and make that call. Now, let's talk specifically about the schematic fit with Jayden Daniels, because that's the key to seeing whether this is more than just a big-name splash. Tyreek is obviously a speed demon, but the route running is seriously underrated. He is not just a straight-line deep threat hoping the QB chucks it. He can run slants with surgical precision, outs that break at a perfect 90 degrees, comebacks that bake corners, screens that turn into touchdowns because of the yards after catch. He is extremely versatile in a modern offense. And Jaden is already showing in college and in that rookie season that he can hit every level of the field. In 2024, the deep ball was lethal. Safeties were nervous because Jaden knew when to take those vertical shots and had the accuracy to hit them. In 2025, he was stuck checking down and throwing short because there was nobody consistently winning downfield against legit coverage. With Hill in the mix, that explosive vertical dimension comes right back and forces defenses to respect every single down and every single play. And we cannot ignore the multiplier effect on Terry McLaurin, which is huge. Picture this. Hill split out on one side, Terry on the other, and a safety who has to make an impossible choice on where to shade help. If the safety leans toward Hill, Terry gets the true one on one. If the safety helps toward Terry, Hill has room to operate. And if the defense tries to double both of them, guess what? Our tight ends and slot guys are running free through the middle. It's a straight win-win setup for Jaden Daniels, fam. There is no clean defensive answer. But, and there's always a but in this kind of breakdown, we also have to be honest about age and timeline. Hill turns 32 in October of 2026. That's not old in normal life, but in NFL years, especially for a receiver whose game is so tied to explosive speed, that's a real consideration. Add in the knee injury, and the margin for error gets thinner every season. If we trade for him and he goes down again with another major injury, we just burn serious draft capital and a big chunk of cap on a player who can't help on the field. That is exactly what happened to teams like the Broncos when they went all in on Russell Wilson. The timing was off, expectations didn't match reality, and the whole thing turned into a historic mess that strapped them in salary, cap hell, for years. We cannot afford to rerun that script, especially when we're trying to build something sustainable around Jaden. So what do? How do we weigh this risk-reward? I think it all comes down to the medical eval from our staff. If our doctors and specialists say Hill can reasonably get back to around 80 to 90% of prime Tyreek, bro, I'm pulling that trigger without blinking. Because 80 to 90% of Tyreek Hill is still better than 100% of almost every receiver available. And if we can land him without completely selling out every future draft, that's a calculated swing worth taking. Plus, fam, think about the message a move like this sends to the whole building and the league. If the Commanders bring in Tyreek Hill, they are basically saying, we are all in on winning right now. We are not slow cooking some patient rebuild. We are not in development year mode. We're chasing the playoffs and a Super Bowl immediately, and that message matters. It matters to Jaden Daniels, who needs to see the front office is serious about giving real weapons. It matters to free agents who are looking for a legit contender. And it matters to fans like us who are starving for something real to believe in after such a brutal, disappointing season. So yeah, Tyreek Hill is absolutely a big-time risk. But it's also a potentially transformational opportunity. And at this crossroads, with Jaden Daniels heading into year 3 and that rookie contract window slowly closing, we cannot afford to just sit back and play everything ultra safe. We need bold moves that raise this team's ceiling, and this would easily be one of the boldest and most impactful. Okay, bro, that was Tyreek Hill. Explosive, risky, exciting, franchise-changing. But now we're flipping to the other side of the ball, because there's another name popping up hard in these trade talks, and this one is just as controversial for totally different reasons. Let's talk defense, fam, because if we're serious about competing again, we cannot keep giving up 30 a game like it's nothing. And the name that's all over every analyst segment and article right now is TJ Watt. Let's get into it. Fam, when I saw Sporting News specifically list TJ Watt as a realistic trade target for the Commanders, my first gut reaction was, bro, That would be absolutely insane in the best way. Then a few seconds later, my brain went, hold up. Does this actually make sense for us? Because look, TJ Watt is literally a generational monster. 4-time All-Pro, 115 sacks across 9 pro seasons, Defensive Player of the Year. This dude is a living modern-era legend. But he's also already 31, coming off the worst stat line since that 2022 injury year. And the Steelers probably don't want to move him under any circumstance. So we gotta slice this up carefully, because there are a lot of layers here. First, big picture Commanders defense. We are absolutely starving for a true elite edge rusher. That's not some hot take, fam. That's just facts from last season's numbers. Our pass rush was inconsistent at best and straight invisible at worst. We had nobody consistently winning one-on-one against quality offensive tackles. And when you can't generate pressure with 4, it does not matter how good your corners are or how clever your coverages are. The quarterback is just standing back there waiting for someone to pop open. That's exactly where TJ Watt would immediately change everything. Even in that down year statistically, he is still one of the most feared and respected pass rushers in the league. The combo of explosive first step off the edge, polished hand usage, and a motor that never shuts off makes him almost impossible to handle one-on-one. And the biggest strategic impact is this. Just being on the field forces offenses to change. Protections. Tight ends start chipping. Running backs stay in the block. They slide the line his way constantly. That naturally frees up everybody else on our defensive front to win their one-on-ones. But here's the core problem we can't just wave away, bro. Watt turns 32 in October of 2026. And even though he's still really productive and dominant, the numbers clearly show a gradual decline. That 2025 season was his lightest production since that serious 2022 injury. Is that the first real sign that the body is starting to wear down after years of nonstop punishment? Maybe, and we need to factor that in. And if we're going to pour serious draft capital and cap space into an edge rusher, do we really want that player to maybe give us only 2 strong years before falling off? Then there's the whole Steelers organizational situation. According to Sporting News, Pittsburgh is not in any kind of full tear-down mode. They just brought in Mike McCarthy as the new head coach, and that alone tells you they still want to be in the playoff mix right away. Why in the world would they trade away their best defensive player, their emotional leader, their elite edge? It just doesn't add up logically, fam. Unless Watt personally asks out or the Steelers decide on some massive reset nobody sees coming, this feels more like fantasy talk than an actual realistic scenario. On top of that, the financial and draft costs would be steep. We're talking at least a 2027 second-round pick, according to those Sporting News projections. Maybe more if there's a bidding war. And once again, we don't even have that 2026 second-rounder because it's already gone. So we'd be literally mortgaging more future drafts for a player who is objectively in the back half of a career. Is that worth it? That depends on where we really are as a team. If the Commanders were truly one defensive piece away from a Super Bowl, I'd say go for it with zero hesitation. Bring him in, give Dan Quinn and new defensive coordinator Deroni Jones that elite edge to finish the scheme, and push every chip in for a ring. But bro, let's be brutally honest. That's not where we are. We just came off a 5-12 nightmare. There are holes on both sides of the ball. We need youth, speed, juice, players smacking their physical prime. And Watt, as dominant as he is, doesn't really fit that long-term roster profile. This is where Adam Peters' evolution and lessons learned come into play. We've already seen that he'll swing on big-name vets. The Martian Lattimore move was exactly that, and it did not deliver for all kinds of reasons. Do we really want to risk basically running that same play again with Watt? Personally, I do not think we should. Now, that does not mean we don't badly need an edge. We absolutely do, fam. It's probably the top defensive need heading into this offseason. But I strongly believe there are better fits for where we are on the curve. Free agency might bring options like Hassan Reddick, who is still productive, Josh Sweat right in the middle of a prime, maybe even Max Crosby if the Raiders finally decide to blow it up. And then there's the draft with younger, high-upside edges we can grow into the scheme. Why not go that route instead of paying heavy for a 32-year-old whose numbers are already sliding? And we also got to think about the message a Watt trade would send. Bringing TJ Watt in is basically announcing we are a win-now team right this second. But is that actually true, given our roster and record? Can we honestly say we're a Super Bowl team in 2026? If we just plop Watt onto this defense? I'm not convinced, bro. And if we're not actually at that level, then all we're doing is burning resources for a move that won't push us over the top and might just lock us into more long-term mediocrity. Timing is everything with veteran stars. The Rams nailed the Stafford timing because the rest of the roster was already set. The Broncos totally whiffed with Wilson because the foundation was not ready. Right now, we look a lot closer to that Denver situation than to the LA one, and that should make you stink real hard. So my final verdict on TJ Watt is this. In a vacuum, having him would be incredible. But strategically for us, right now, it just does not line up. The timeline is off. The roster building philosophy is off. And realistically, Pittsburgh probably isn't trading that dude anyway. So even though his name is flashy and gets all the clicks, I truly think Adam Peters should stay away and focus on younger options that match where this franchise is headed. All right, fam, we hit the explosive offense angle with Tyreek Hill. We talked about a potentially dominant defense move with TJ Watt. Now let's close with a position most fans are sleeping on, but that is absolutely massive for Jaden Daniels. Long-term success, tight end. And the name heating up in insider circles is TJ Hockenson. Let's see if this actually makes sense, or if it's just another empty rumor. Bro. Fam, if there's one lesson we learned the hard way in 2025, it's that we cannot rely on Zach Ertz as a full-time Tay 1. And I want to be super clear, that is not a shot at Ertz at all, bro. That dude left everything on. The feel for this squad played with a huge heart, but that brutal injury against the Vikings was just tough to watch. And now, going into this critical offseason, the future with Ertz here is genuinely uncertain and probably done. Which means we've got a massive hole at tight end that has to be filled right away. Commander's Wire dropped a detailed piece calling out TJ Hockenson as a realistic solution. And when I first read that, I thought, okay, that actually lines up. Because look, Hockenson is not the kind of name that blows up the ESPN bottom line like Tyreek or Watt, but this is exactly the kind of solid, reliable, versatile player Jaden Daniels needs for sustainable success. First, the full Minnesota situation. The Vikings are around $40 million over the salary cap limit heading into free agency and have to make some ugly cuts. Hawkinson's contract is big, and he's paid like the quality tight end. He is. If they cut him with a post-June 1st designation, they free up almost $16 million in cap space. That is real money, fam. And while Hockenson is clearly a good player when healthy, Minnesota could reasonably decide that cash is better spread across other positions or multiple depth pieces. That's exactly where Washington steps in as a natural fit. We badly need a tight end who can do two core things: block at a legit level in the run game and in pass protection, and act as a reliable receiver in the passing game. Hockenson can do both at a high level. In 2025, he played 15 games for the Vikings and put up 51 grabs for 438 yards and 3 touchdowns. Those numbers don't jump off the page, but there's a lot of context. Minnesota's quarterback situation was a mess all year. J.J. McCarthy barely looked his way consistently, and the offensive line was so banged up that Hockenson was stuck, blocking way more than running routes. But when he's fully healthy and in a system that uses him the right way, Hockenson is genuinely one of the best complete tight ends in the league. Back in 2022, when he first got to Minnesota. In that trade from Detroit, he caught 9 balls for 70 yards in his very first game with the Vikings. And guess who that debut was against? US fam, the Washington Commanders. So we've already seen firsthand what this dude can do when he's locked in. And here's the really underrated piece people are missing. Hockenson already has a personal connection with our new offensive coordinator, David Blau. They were teammates in Detroit from 2019 through 2021, and then reunited again in Minnesota in 2022 when Blau was on the practice squad. Blau personally helped get Hockenson ready schematically for that first Vikings game after the trade. That existing chemistry and trust is real, bro. And that matters a lot when you're trying to plug a new piece into a brand new offense quickly. Now, let's dig into the schematic fit with Jayden Daniels, because that's the key. Jayden naturally thrives working the middle of the field. Loves hitting tight ends and slot guys on those short and intermediate routes where the accuracy can really shine. In 2024, Zach Ertz was a huge piece of that puzzle. In 2025, without a healthy, effective Ertz, that entire layer of the passing game basically disappeared. Hockenson brings that dimension right back and restores the balance. On top of that, Hockenson is a legitimately solid blocker. Not a George Kittle-style mauler who just erases defensive ends, but more than good enough to hold up in pass pro and in the run game. That's huge, because if we want Jayden standing clean in the pocket, we need tight ends who can help in protection when the scheme calls for it. And the best part of this whole setup, fam, is that Hockenson probably doesn't cost us any picks at all. If Minnesota cuts him for cap relief, he becomes a free agent, and we can just sign him outright. No draft capital, no picks sacrificed, and while the contract won't be cheap, it's not going to be Travis Kelce or Kyle Pitts money. Realistically, we're probably looking at something in the $10 to $12 million per year range, which is totally manageable with our current cap situation. There are still risks. Hockenson turns 29 this summer. Not old, but not some young rookie either. He's had a few minor injuries over the years that have limited his availability at times. But compared to the other free agent type options, Kyle Pitts, who has never truly lived up to the hype, David Njoku, who's hit or miss Isaiah, likely who is still more projection than proof, Hockenson clearly offers the best mix of experience, versatility, and remaining upside. And think about the message this sends to Jayden Daniels. If we bring in Hockenson, we're basically telling Jayden, we are committed to giving you a real safety blanket. We want you to have a trusted tight end you can go to when the pocket collapses and everything else breaks down. That's huge for a young quarterback's mentality, bro. Jayden needs to feel that the front office is invested in the long game with him. On top of that, Hockenson fits Adam Peters' roster-building philosophy perfectly. This is not some loud move that dominates the national talk shows. It's not a win-the-headline trade. It's a smart, calculated, fundamentally sound move that clearly upgrades the roster without blowing up the future. That's exactly the type of decision Peters should be making over and over right now. Brian Manning from Commanders Wire nailed it. Hockenson is still only 28. When healthy, he has proven he can be one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL. He'd be a perfect middle-of-the-field outlet for Daniels. And you don't have to pay true top-of-the-market money to land him. So my final read on TJ Hockenson is simple. Do it, no hesitation. If the Vikings cut him to clear cap like everyone expects, go hard after him in free agency. Put a strong, fair contract on the table, bring him to Washington, and give Jayden Daniels the reliable tight end that's badly needed to get back to that dynamic quarterback who carried us to the NFC Championship game. This is exactly the kind. A move that doesn't blow up on social media, but actually wins real football games. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. All right, fam. That's the whole rundown. 3 massive stories, 3 potentially franchise-shifting moves that could completely change the Direction of the Washington Commanders in 2026. Tyreek Hill will be the most explosive and exciting swing, but also the most expensive and medically risky. TJ Watt will be insane in terms of pure talent, but doesn't really fit our competitive timeline or organizational philosophy. And TJ Hockenson looks like the smartest, cleanest, most fundamentally sound play. The one that actually makes the roster better without sacrificing our long-term future. And bro, keep it a buck. This offseason is absolutely pivotal for this franchise. Adam Peters has to show clearly that lessons were learned from the pain of 2025. Has to prove there's a real plan for building a sustainable winner around Jaden Daniels. Because if that doesn't happen, fam, we are going to waste this golden rookie contract window. And that would be an organizational disaster that could take years to fix. But I truly believe there's hope. I believe in Adam Peters and the vision. I believe in Dan Quinn and the leadership. And above all, I believe in Jaden Daniels and that generational talent. The core is here to compete. We just need the right pieces around it and the right scheme to unlock everything. So if you're watching this right now, jump down into the comments and tell me, what move would you pull the trigger on? Tyreek Hill and that pure explosiveness? TJ Watt and the defensive dominance? TJ Hockenson and the reliability? Or none of these, and you'd rather go in a totally different direction? I really want to hear what Commanders Nation is thinking, because at the end of the day, this is our team, and we all want the exact same thing: get back to winning football. And if you rock with this video and the deep dive breakdown, bro, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to cover every single thing that happens this offseason. And turn those notifications on so you don't miss the next upload, because this is just getting started. This offseason is going to be absolutely wild, and I'll be here every single day bringing you the latest news, the detailed analysis, and everything you need to stay locked in on the Commanders. See you in the next one, fam. Hail to the Commanders. Let's get it.